What's up,
No soda
everybody?
can? Okay.
No soda can. No soda can. I got my soda in a cup this time. I figured Ash would be Johnny on the spot, but this is his first time on
That's true.
on my channel discussing Fantastic Four Hickman. But thank you everybody for joining us. It's your boy Skip, aka Skip and Tosh, here back again with my twin. Hey, I hit it on the right time. Zach, Zach, say what's up to the people.
What's up to the people? No, I'm just kidding. What's up, guys? Good to be back with my buddy Skip, my twin, talking about some great comics. It's been too long. It feels like it was like a month ago. I know it wasn't that. It might have been a month ago, actually. It might have been a minute. But yeah, I'm excited, man. I've been drinking up these comics. I'm ready to talk about it, to nerd out over it. It's gonna be a good time.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, just about. I think it was a month, maybe a little over.
A little
Hopefully,
over, yeah.
everybody was patient with us because we were really excited to talk about it, and we already mentioned that we have someone joining us. You already see him down there, Mr. Ash on Comics. How are you doing, my friend?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this. I have been looking forward to going through the Hickman Fantastic Four for a long time. so um, now I finally get to go through it with people I enjoy talking comics with. And as I always say over on my non existent channel, that, that's what for me makes comics better. If you just, when I read comics by myself and then I put the comic away and I go do my business and never speak of it again, it's you can enjoy it, but it's not the same. So I love being able to digest it, talk about it, chew on it, hear what other people liked about it. That's just one of the fun things about the hobby for me.
Absolutely. As we all know, comics is a very solitary hobby from the creators. Now, we don't get a lot of bullpens and all that stuff anymore. Most people are making stuff in their home studios solo. A few of my creator friends, they tell me that they jump on Discord and they jump on Zoom and like try to create that environment, but most of the time they're working on different hours, not always the same. And then, the books get shipped to us, and then most of the time we're reading them, by ourselves. So at the very least, it's nice that we've baked into the hobby a few places to talk about it, and it's nice that we have online discussions and forums like this where we can come together, read some really cool stuff, and then, you know, break it down and talk about how it made us feel and how it hit us. So, yeah, thank you again, Zach. So nice to be back with you, Ash. Thank you so much for joining us for the first time. I'm really hoping it won't be the last. I did not spring on Ash. Zach already knew this, but this whole thing is supposed to go all the way through to Secret Wars, and that's where we're supposed to end this here journey. So,
Oh,
Ash, hopefully, hold on to your butt because this is going to be quite a long
so wait,
ride, my friend.
that sounds awesome. But what's all involved? So after Fantastic Four, what comes next? What's the
After
what's the
Fantastic,
roadmap?
the roadmap is we're gonna do Fantastic Four, which we're knocking out right now, and then next we're going to do. We'll take a detour and we'll probably just knock out Shield, since
Oh,
it's like
okay.
it's part of it.
Yeah.
It plays into it, but it's a little bit of a detour. We'll see, but then Avengers and New Avengers, and since those coincide, since they're intertwined, like everybody knows of House of X Powers of 10, we'll go through that journey, and then that dumps us off right there at
It goes, yeah, right into Secret Wars.
the 8 issues of Secret Wars.
Oh,
So
Yep.
okay. So it's not
The
that.
the Hickman Avengers run, I remember reading that one. I was knee deep in Avengers titles at the time, and I never read the new Avengers one because I remember that was when he took over, I think, from Bendis, and it was basically the Illuminati, but they called them New Avengers. So I read the
twin, hold on, wait.
regular.
You read regular Avengers, but you didn't read New Avengers?
Yeah. Yeah, and then I read the events like Infinity and stuff, which is like you need to read New Avengers to really get the grasp of what's going on. So it's like, what is this? Why do Namor and Black Panther hate each other now? Oh wait, well I knew about that, but yeah,
Right.
there's just stuff that happens that you're just like, what is going on? So yeah, so that'll be fun. I'll get to look at that with new eyes.
Yes. Okay. So that's exciting because then there are some gaps to fill in. So there will be some discovery, from both of you guys, with that journey, and kind of similar to how you jumped to the complete edition, volume 2, but it didn't
Yeah,
have the 4 issues of the trade paperback volume 2. That gap got
yeah,
filled in. The gaps from New Avengers will
yeah.
definitely
I'll
get
get
filled in.
that post story discovery.
Yes.
Now I got a
Yes, you
question.
will.
I got a
Yeah, what you
question.
got,
Do
Ash?
I need to read stuff before this? Like secret, what was it? Secret Invasion? Secret something?
I
Yeah,
Didn't
I
Hickman do
haven't
something with?
I haven't read anything so far. I haven't come across anything where it's like, oh, if I had read this previous, like that would have helped. I haven't had that feeling yet.
Oh,
I
I
think.
did.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
I jumped in on Dark Reign and I was like, I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you might have, yeah, coming in on Dark Reign. Yeah, during Dark Reign, there's a ton of, yeah. I mean, there's all the other stuff going on with Norman Osborn and the
Yeah, I'm like, yeah,
Cabal
the
and
Norman
stuff. Yeah,
Osborn. They're referencing Civil War all the time, and I'm like,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
there's scrolls running around,
Hmm.
and so I'm like, I think there's a lot of events that I missed.
Yeah. Well, once you
the,
get into Fantastic Four, though, I think by and large, I think most of those go away. Most of those fade away. You don't need to, like, I haven't come across any references. I take that back. I think there's one, but it's not even a big one. There's like one reference to something from Civil War, but
Okay,
it's not like you need to read all of Civil War to understand this reference. So, yeah.
okay,
definitely. Now, I'll say this, Ash, like because I know a little bit more how your brain works. Y- as when we're going through what, like, as we're into Fantastic Four and everything, and we go through, there will be some stuff in Avengers and New Avengers, especially New Avengers, that they are going to talk about some things for the past. They specifically AVX, because that's when like a certain clash happened, and that really got Namor and Wakanda as a whole butting heads. But it's not, they do it in a way to where they show some flashbacks, and if you just take those for what they are and move forward with it, you don't really need to go back and do those. And if you want to, you can always go back and do them later. But this is right when, because these events, and anybody who's read it before or doesn't know, these events ultimately leading up to Secret Wars is what killed off the Ultimate Universe and was supposed to reset. And it did do a soft reset, but when I say soft, like, Marvel really didn't lean into it. Like, it was a very soft reset. And this is like after that we got, all new, all different Marvel. So
Hmm.
this was what ended that stuff. So if you like, they were getting out of the, oh, you have to go back and read everything, because they knew that in their mind all of that stuff wasn't going to matter going forward anyway. So if you want to go back and you want to do, Siege, and then, Secret Invasion, and if you want to do Dark Reign, you can. But Marvel was getting out of making you feel like you have to go back and reading that stuff, and they were good about, like, flashbacks and stuff like that. There's not even a lot of editors notes and stuff like go back and read. Like, they don't even do that a lot because they were
Yeah.
kind of getting off that train,
Yeah.
okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I feel like the story of Dark Reign, the Fantastic Four Dark Reign, was coherent. It was just there were things that I just didn't have the background to. Like I didn't understand why Norman Osborn was coming to kick the Fantastic Four out of the Baxter Building. Like
Hmm.
it's not really relevant too much. You just
Hmm.
you just need to know that much for the story. But it's kind of nice. Like as a longtime comic reader, I'm just like, wait, what led to this? Why is Norman? What's going on? You know, who's this
Absolutely.
symbiote thing that he's got with him? Why is that there? Like I don't know. So
I will say this. I think I think you'll go, like, if you decide to go back, I think you'll get enjoyment out of some of those stories. To me, going back to some of them now, like, to me they feel very dated, but I mean we literally are, like, a decade, removed from some of those stories. So they're fairly
Yeah.
old and they're gonna feel a little dated. Closer to that
Hmm.
time, like even when I was getting back into comics in 2012, I was that much closer, to some of the ones that had already come out. So when I caught back up on, all the DC, crisis events and all of that stuff, like it didn't feel as like it still felt current enough, but I mean, we're in 2022 now. Like I don't even feel like most of those are relevant anymore.
But yeah, I mean, now we're in the era where the big two give you like 6 or 7 earth-shattering events a year.
A year.
And so it's like, actually, see, I look at back in this era where there's like Dark Reign or Secret Invasion, like this is stuff where like the events that they were still coming almost every year, but it was like once a year instead of 6 times a year, so it wasn't as often, and you did have some consequences with certain things that would carry over. So I mean, yeah, I mean this is around the time that I was actually getting really serious. I was pulling like maybe a dozen Marvel books off the shelves regularly at the time. Now I pull like 3 or 4. But yeah, this time there was a ton of stuff going on, and I like this period. This is probably my favorite of the modern era. Between Dark Reign and then they did like what was it called, the Heroic Age, I think was right after it. So there was some good
Right.
stuff there.
Absolutely. But this was this Hickman coming in on Dark Reign, going through Fantastic Four, going through Avengers and New Avengers, on to Secret Wars, was really the best way for all of this to end. I say, in my personal opinion, it's the end of the modern era of comics. And starting with All New, All Different, to me
Mhm.
personally, we're in the postmodern era of comics. That is
Mhm.
so new. A lot of people aren't talking about it yet, and it hasn't been documented. That's a discussion that I would like to have with you two on the stream sometime, maybe this month, if not next month. But since we're here, and Ash was talking about Dark Reign, and he did not join us on the first one. Ash, would you like to take just a few minutes to kind of give us your thoughts on the Dark Reign, Fantastic Four, and then Volume One?
Yeah, certainly. So Dark Reign, just a little quick background. I was not reading Marvel comics during this time. I was out of comics. I was so I, I don't. There's a lot of stuff that I've picked up through the years now. People telling me, "Oh, this happened," but there's a lot of stuff that I just didn't know, and a lot of stuff I still don't know. So if I sound ignorant to stuff to people listening, you know why. So I jump in on this story, and I had read um, the first two arcs, volume 1 and 2, a couple years ago. Skip, you were involved. We read it live on my channel and had a really great time. Loved the books, but I hadn't read Dark Reign. Didn't have it. Later on, I went and picked up the collected, like the deluxe collected edition, and it includes Dark Reign plus the first two volumes of the trades. And I was like, well, I got them. I might as well read them. So I went through, read the stories, and I'm glad I did because it kind of it was kind of a nice prologue to what I had already read, that the actual Fantastic Four books cover, and it opens up with the kids, which I got to say too. Quick side note: I'm not a big fan of the Fantastic Four with kids, and especially Valeria. She kind of annoys me. Uh,
You don't like the Fantastic Six, Ash? What's going on,
Ah.
man?
but I want to say that in this Dark Reign, I was pleasantly amused. I thought Hickman wrote them in a very entertaining fashion. They kind of have this little side adventure as Reed slips off, doing his thing. Um, and I kind of like how there's almost like three stories going on through this. There's Reed in his little, I guess, this bridge thing that he's making, and we'll get to that, like what that all encompasses later. But then we got the kids who are kind of like stranded now because he's off in this other world, and then he's completely distorted time and space. So the rest of the Fantastic Four are off in other parallel dimensions doing stuff. And so I kind of like how I was bouncing around through that story. And it's a really good writing technique that I love is when writers do that, because it keeps you kind of like, oh, like it gives you just enough, and it's like, okay, hold on, now we're gonna go over here, and you're just like, no, I want to know more about this. And if you're a bad writer and you don't do that, you feed the story too quickly and you don't let that tension build. Um, so you got to see some really cool, like, what if style stories of the Fantastic Four going off. There's this storyline I'm sure Zach loved when they went off into dinosaur land. And then we get to see him go off into a medieval land, like a pirate ship land. Like, there's all these just what do they call it? Like, it was there was a term that Hickman used, collapsed space time. I like the medieval one where he had it kind of referenced Civil War a bit, but it had like where Sue Storm was like the queen and Captain America was like her knight, and Tony Stark was a rebel knight, and it just really fun stuff like that. That Hickman, I thought, used to good effect, like be able to tell these like weird multiverse bizarro stories, but in a way that's both silly but also still works. It never really loses you in the plot line because he found a really good excuse to show that. I also wasn't familiar with this artist. I think his name was Sean Chin. I don't think I've ever seen his stuff before, and I don't think I've seen his stuff since, that, to my knowledge. He's pretty new to me, but I really did like his art. Um, I actually think he's as a really good storyteller too, which we'll talk about more when we get into the Fantastic Four books. Um, and of course, anytime you throw Doom in a comic, I'm really happy. So yeah, we get a cool like Western. Like, each issue was almost like a different time period, which I thought was a really cool thing too. The Western scene with Black Susan versus the Beyonder.
Yeah,
That was fun. Never wears out its welcome. And just really good fun adventure stories. This is kind of how I understand the Fantastic Four. Is, to me, they've always been less superheroes and more adventurers. And so I like when they do stories like that. Not that I'm opposed to the Fantastic Four being heroes and saving people or whatever, but I think what sets them apart from so many other comics is that sort of. I was telling my buddy about it because he hates Fantastic Four, but he's never really read it, so he's just kind of biased. And I was like, I think you'd really like it because you're a big Star Trek fan. Like, they're kind of like that. They go into like strange new dimensions, space, like wherever, and encounter things that no one has ever seen and get into trouble and then have to figure their way out of it. Um, I liked there was a scene in this too, like, that I really kind of captivated my interest, that when I say I hate the kids, but I do actually like Franklin Richards when he's done right. He's on or off. They've really kind of abused that character, but when Franklin Richards shoots Norman Osborn with his toy pistol, he's got a little cowboy outfit, and there's a part where Norm's about to, I think, kill his dad, and Franklin shoots him, but the pistol, it shouldn't be able to shoot him, but then we all kind of know, wait, Franklin's got reality warping powers. He's like one of the most powerful super beings, but he's supposed to be negated. So what's going on with that? And I like how Hickman doesn't really answer you. He's really great at doing stories like this where he'll throw things out there and make you go, wait, what's that all about? And then just move on. And you're like, what? And you just know later on it's going to come to a point. Um, but throwing those subplots out there like that is also another lost art that I don't see too much these days in mainstream comics. And I really
Yeah.
appreciated that. Um, the art in this, it's not the greatest rendering, but man, the storytelling, there's a lot of detail. um really just fun scenes. um I
absolutely.
really I really enjoyed it.
And it really sets up the bridge, right, which is a very important thing going into going into the next phase of the run, the volume one. So how did you feel about volume one? What was your thoughts on how Dark Reign went into volume one of Hickman's Fantastic Four?
Well, real quick before I get into that,
Sure.
in the complete edition, it
Hmm.
doesn't just have Dark Reign, it also has a one shot story called and I get the land.
Hmm.
And it has fantastic art. Whose name, the guy's name I already forgot. It's like Ari something. Um, but and I probably I could probably just show. I want to show it off if I can. To
Sure.
if switch my image here. I'll just put it. People can see it's like full painted art, and
Ooh.
it's a Doom story. Uh, and Doom is my favorite character, so I was like, "Ooh, what's this?" When I flipped the page and I got to this, and I'm flipping through and just seeing this, and um, it's kind of like the opposite from what I'm getting here. It's almost like Doom has kind of got the opposite of the Illuminati. It's kind of got his own thing going on. And here's a nice panel for Zach. I was like, oh, look, it's got some nice cheesecake. Look at that. Very Conan. Doom's
Yeah.
Doom's keeping slaves, slave girls. Like this is a no-no. You wouldn't see this in today's Marvel. But man, just a really cool little Doctor Doom story where he and Namor are allied, and at the end, Namor's like, "Oh, what's going on in that mind of yours?" And then one panel shows Doom choking Namor, and it's like Doom, always Doom, and you're just like, so you just know eventually he's gonna betray Namor too, because Doom only looks out for himself. But it was really just beautiful art, and Hickman's got a really good voice for Doom, so I was really pleased because I'm really picky. If you, even though Doom's my favorite character, if you
Hmm.
if you mess him up, then I'll hate you. um,
All hope
So
lies in
the
Doom. Hmm.
volume one was fantastic. Uh,
I see what you did
this
there.
this has made me. Oh yeah, no pun intended. Uh, oh, get it back, get it back. There we go. Um, volume one was really just drew me in. You get this story with young kid Richards and this father who I'm not familiar with. Now, I'm not the world's biggest Fantastic Four fan, so there's a lot of back lore that I don't know. The big Fantastic Four fans are going to be like, what? But so forgive me on that. But I didn't know this character at all until Hickman. And at first I was like, I don't know, what are you doing? I don't want to see like this whole legacy thing. But the way Hickman does it, it's super interesting. And I love how he also just throws you into the action. He doesn't spend time building up to this big, story or whatever. It's just boom, we're in the Fantastic Four. These guys are having adventures. It's immediately like the facing off with the Wizard. Um, and Dale Eaglesham's art is just gorgeous. It's a fantastic thing
Yes.
to have a
Yes.
great writer with a great artist. Now, I told you I was going to get into the storytelling aspect. So the one thing is, even though I like looking at Eaglesham's art more than Sean Chen's, he's prettier to look at. I can just flip through these pages and go, oh, it's beautiful, it's beautiful. But Eaglesham's not a great storyteller. He's more of a pinup artist. He's adequate. I don't want to say he's terrible, but uh, that was the one thing I was a little disappointed. There were some scenes in the book where I'm like, oh, this seems very stilted, but it also helped. It kind of made some of the funny bits flop where I think Hickman was trying to be cutesy when the art wasn't selling it for me. Um, I'm just flipping through to kind of remind myself of all the events. Oh man, the whole Council of the Reeds, that reveal is spectacular. When you finally figure out what the bridge is for, the whole Council of the Reeds, you're like, whoa! And then when the Celestials show up and just start wreaking havoc, it's on. This is one of the just the most epic. If you like awesome epic comic conflicts, this is fantastic. Again, here's what I did there. It's wow. So amazing. You're just and you feel it because he sets it up right. First, you're just in this wonder of like, oh my gosh, the council reads and look at what they can do, and you get your mind reeling in all these accomplishments that they can feed the universe and do all these different things. and then all of a sudden alarms start going off, and you have to shift gears, and you're like, wait a minute, I mean, there's like 100 reads here. Like, who could really threaten them? They have 3 Infinity Gauntlets. They have like all these, like, what could go on? And yeah, the Celestials show up, and they don't waste time. They don't be like, hey, we want to talk. They're just annihilate. we're here for this, and you need to go. And Celestials are no joke. So I love that. Um, I have a little bit of a problem with Valeria being smarter than Reed Richards, and she's only 3 years old. That's not selling on me. Just wanted to say, I was just flipping through, but yeah, just beautiful. Sorry.
We have no problem with the giant rock monster guy walking around or the mole people, but no, the 3-year-old genius girl. That's where I draw the line.
She's 3 years old. She's 3. I'm not saying I don't have a problem with her potentially growing up and being smarter, but that her intellect, not even just her intellect, is more her education. She can do things. I'm like, you haven't been alive long enough to process enough learning to build some of these, like, like, it just, anyways,
we can talk about that. I have
insane
reasons why I'm okay with it. I know you're not, like you said, I know you're not a huge Fantastic Four fan. There are some things that I kind of use as a escape route or a get out of jail free card for that, but we could talk about that later though.
I don't want to beleaguer the point. I like that they have these fun adventures. They go to the New World, I think is what it's called.
Yes, New World. Yeah.
And again, this is one of those times where I was like, I'm not really familiar with some of these characters, and I'm sure there's backstory. Like, I'm like, what is New World? I can guess at some of the things, but I don't really know. This character Castle, I don't know who he is. I'm sure there's some backstory. But yeah, there's it just, you know what? I didn't actually mind though, because that's how I grew up with comics.
Yeah, it's just
when I was a
adventures.
kid,
You
I would just go and
get
like pick
thrown
up an
in.
X-Men issue, and I'd just be
Right.
like, who are these people? And so part of the fun is actually, I don't know, like, I'll have to learn. But for the sake of discussing here online, I'm just pointing that out. Yeah, really cool. I hate Hulk legacy characters, but there's like Hulk Jr. in this. And there's a really funny scene where he punches out the villain, knocks her head off. Yeah, so Hickman takes lemons, what I would normally think are lemons, and makes lemonade out of them. I have to say too, Skip, we've talked about this in the past, and when I read this originally, I remember saying the first 2 issues were amazing, and then the second 2 issues were eh.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, and I was like, "What?" Like, that's when the adventures expand beyond just the Baxter building.
Yeah. So I have to say, after rereading it and my expectations different, I don't love those second issues, but I appreciate them a lot more. Part of it does have to do that Eaglesham was not doing the art either, and it kind of really dipped. But I don't. For me, I don't think Hickman's forte is doing the cutesy, emotional family stuff. We've discussed this in the past too, where I think Hickman is like a very clinical, kind of cerebral writer. he doesn't human super well, and so this is him trying to be like, oh yeah, but it is better than I remember. So I just wanted to mention that. I do really especially love. I do love the end of that story though, where this guy comes and invades the Baxter building, and the Fantastic Four have to try to stop him, and he kind of captures Franklin, and then he has the secret talk with Valeria, and you're like, who is this guy? And at the very end, he goes over to Franklin's bed, and he's saying, or no, he comes back, and he talks to Valeria as he's leaving, and she says, "Happy birthday, retard." And and I was like, oh, of course, she's super smart, she'd figure it out. But it was really cool, a cool way of revealing that it's Franklin from the future. And that has a special place in my heart, because one of the reasons I like Franklin Richards so much is because I'm a huge X-Men fan.
Oh, yeah.
Franklin Richards in the future is with Rachel Summers, one of my favorite X-Men, and one of my
Yep.
favorite storylines is Days of Future Past,
Mm-hmm.
and Rachel has to come to the past to help out the X-Men. She leaves Franklin behind, so it's kind of like she's, you know, the lover's lost, and just that whole storyline. I always like. I knew that Franklin was too powerful to really be involved in things, so I appreciated the creativity that he's not there and you're keeping the future. But I also had helped to set some drama for her to miss. And anyways, I just always liked Franklin for that reason. So seeing future Franklin again was kind of fun in that respect, and yeah, and then also the future, somehow all hope lies in doom when he says to her, and why is Franklin
Oh
Richards telling
man.
his sister all hope lies in doom? And I'm sure we're going to get to that. So that is the
Oh,
conclusion and my summary thoughts on the volume one.
bro. Okay, thank you so much for catching us up, Ash, on your feelings of Dark Reign and then on into Volume 1. Before we dive into Volume 2, I will say there is a reason why every time we talk about this, you hear me, like an idiot, always say, all hope lies in doom. There's a reason. And it don't end with just the Fantastic Four run. That's all
Nope.
I'll say.
No, it
Alrighty,
does
so
not.
here we that's right. So all right, here we are. Fantastic Four, Volume 2, Jonathan Hickman. Um, we're gonna dive right in. Twin,
Yes.
we went through Volume 1, we got Ash's thoughts as well. You and I tackled it. Going into Volume 2, like what like you had kind of gone over it before, but
Mm-hmm.
like what was your anticipation, what like what was your hype level, just kind of what were some of your thoughts just going into this one, what were some of the things you would hope you would get out of volume 2?
So yeah, so especially, and I'm listening to Ash recap on Volume One, and it's just like it's bringing back all those feelings. Like, okay, I was looking forward. I didn't know, and I know Hickman. I've read some of his stuff before. Like I've read his Avengers run. I know how he can be methodical. He can do the long burn, the long slow burn with some of his storytelling. So I was like, is there going to be some more time travel shenanigans that pop up in here? We know like there's a whole bunch of stuff that he tells his younger self. So I was kind of like, okay, it's got to be, something related to that. But then coming in here and in because there's this thing, I think it's like on a piece of note paper or it's in a scribble or something where it's called the War of Four Cities gets referenced. And
Mm-hmm.
so going into this is primarily where you're getting a lot of setup for that. And what you get, I actually dig it. It's these four stories or so, and they can read kind of as little standalone episodes, little standalone adventures. But I love how they tie into like specific, I guess specific areas of like the Fantastic Four lore,
Yes.
like like Mole Man and the Moloids. Like the very first little story we have in here is with Mole Man, their very first bad guy. And then there's a section that it doesn't have to do with Namor or Atlantis proper, but
Mm-hmm.
it does deal with this underwater kingdom. There's the Inhumans, they show up. There's a part that deals with them, and then the Negative Zone, which is probably one of my favorite parts because I just love Annihilus as a bad guy. He's probably one of my favorite Marvel bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
With like the Annihilus wave that went on in Cosmic Marvel was one of my favorite cosmic stories.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just and I knew Hickman was writing it, and I actually I liked kind of the little human element, the family writing that he did. I really dug that with the first volume. I don't think we got that quite as much. There are some moments where it does shine. Those are some of the moments I think that stand out most in this second volume. But you do get it's more kind of action. It's more plot. Not really a lot of, not a slow moment. I don't think I didn't feel bored or like, okay, get to the good stuff. I didn't have that at all reading this. Just a good, fun sci-fi adventure read. It's just a lot of
Absolutely.
fun. Yeah.
Definitely. Me going into it, I'm trying to think back to when I first read it. but I'm going to be taking more fillings from this time around. I just really enjoyed, like the expansion. I felt like Volume One did such a good job of setting the tone of what this run was going to be, and especially having read the whole thing now and thinking back to it, it
Hmm.
set it all damn near perfectly. Like I, I'm gonna say perfectly. I'm gonna be bold and say it perfectly. It really set it up perfectly. Um, and then to come into Volume Two, and to see, like you said, parts of the Fantastic Four lore being touched on and then built out. Other parts of just kind of like some of Marvel lore, pulling a little bit of that in and building it out. I'm a huge Herbert Wyndham fan, so anytime you
Hmm.
mention a high evolutionary, like my interest is peaked. So like just bringing in the high evolutionary, making it such an important point, and then yeah, like the Inhuman stuff, the Negative Zone stuff, kind of bringing all that in. You're right there. It's not that there's no family moments, but I
Hmm.
do feel like they get a little more lean, and I'm
Yeah.
curious, and I know I'll get to hear how Ash felt about those, where some of those were to me those family moments hit, and those are some of my favorite moments in the book. Like the family moments and the character moments to me are
Hmm.
right up there with the plot moments, and
Hmm.
I don't think there's a lot of other Hickman books where that's the case. This might be the height of it for me personally, where the character moments and the plot moments are pretty much neck and neck. There's not a
Hmm.
huge disparity between them. But what is was interesting in this is how lean those moments were. So there were less of them, but Hickman had to find a way to make them more impactful. Whereas like the team in the first volume, there was kind
Hmm.
of some strife, and there was like kind of the beginning of like some splintering. For
Yeah.
that to kind of get resolved, especially with Sue and Reed and them, being closer together, along with that, Reed making a stand of like what his priorities are. He wants to solve everything, but above that, his family, the four of those, and especially his bond with Sue, he put above all that. So
Hmm.
that sets the tone going into this. Everybody's closer together. So now they can go deeper and go further. And also, something that stood out to me, and I've made some notes about it, some of the commentary that Hickman does through the story is some of the most potent and on point to me personally, and has the most fidelity along with the story. So yeah, volume two was expansion, and I think it did expansion in such a great way.
Hmm.
Ash, where was your temperature? What was the thermostat going into volume two for you?
Well, coming into it was a lot of hype because you're right that volume one really sets things up. And even though if I was disappointed in the whole birthday stuff, it still had its impact. I mean, the idea of that Franklin Richards from the future and the Hall of Hope lies in Doom, and then with all the Council of the Reeds, and I think there was another scene too where one of the one of the Reeds says to our Reed like all hope lies in Doom or something about like Doom being a key player. I can't remember where that was, but um that really like Hickman's like putting it in your head, like, hey, get it straight. And it's like again, I'm as a Doom fan, I'm like, yes, he's not going to just be some little schlocky guy. That he's a master player in this universe. And I did have to like too. I had to really appreciate when the council was adopting Reed, and they take him to the pit, and they have all the like lobotomized Dooms,
Mm-hmm.
and they're basically
Yeah.
explaining to him like the biggest threat in every universe is Doom. Like you don't understand like every single time. It's not like there's a good Doom out there. There's like and he has to be stopped and they're just like it's a necessary evil and he's like, "Huh." And then later when the one guy, I think it was the one guy who got lost his gift from the Celestials, I think is the one that said it to him, if I remember right, that Doom is key.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, so yeah, I love that Hickman sets up all these things to make me look for. So when I came into the second volume, it was hit or miss, and I don't want to sound negative because I really enjoyed it. I just wasn't expecting what I got, but I did really like what I got. And the big thing that I like about Volume 2, number one, the art is just, I'm just flipping through it right now. It's just so freaking gorgeous. Like, you guys, if you haven't read these, you need to
Dale
come on.
Eaglesham art is not to be slept on. It really is not.
Yeah. It's gorgeous. The coloring is beautiful. And then of course you're getting this fantastic story. Um I wasn't conscious of it as I was reading it, but now as we're reflecting and I'm putting my thoughts together, this second volume especially really reminds me of Claremont's X-Men.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is, number one, it's a very family-oriented story. The X-Men were, when Claremont wrote them, was a very family type thing.
Right.
But also the way Hickman's not writing for trades here. Each
No.
issue is its
Yeah.
own thing. The first
Right.
one is, oh, we're having this adventure with the Mole Men and the city of the High Evolutionary. Okay, cool. What's the next issue? Oh, we're going off into the Arctic and we're gonna see these Atlantean people that we've never even heard of. Like, oh, okay, what's that? Where are we going? Oh, we're going to the moon with the Inhumans. And like, each issue was its own thing. But
Exactly.
just like Claremont did with the X-Men, he would tie those in.
Yep.
So that they would connect, and then there would be subplots running throughout, and they would be like, and so now in hindsight, all these years later, as you know, living through the Hickman X-Men era and stuff, and hearing about how he's this big fan, I can see it. I see him as an X-Men fan more in these books than I did in his own X-Men stuff. So I really appreciate that, because that's the style of writing that I like.
Right.
I like comics being a monthly period. Like, I could imagine picking these up off the shelf. I think these would have been digested probably even better month to month, getting an issue, reading it, and be like, oh, whoa. And then the next issue, like, oh, what's going on now? And just having a monthly adventure book. And I think it's also fitting for the Fantastic Four. Was it originally called from Stan, like, with the world's greatest adventure magazine or something like that?
Yeah, world's greatest. I think it was world's greatest comic magazine or adventure mag or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really found myself, even though it wasn't going where I thought, it won me over. I liked, and I just know Hickman. He's not going to keep doing these like little. These are all going places. Even like that Arctic story. You know, like Sue makes a comment when she takes over and is like, "I'll speak for mankind," and Reed's like, "What? Like, what are you doing?" And she's like, "It has to be done, and you know why it has to be me." And I was like, it got me scratching my head for a second. I was like, "Why does that have to be you?" And then I was like, "Oh, Namor, he's the other
Yep.
Atlantean." Like,
Mhm.
he makes your brain start figuring. I love that, because so many other writers would just explain it. You know why it has to be me, Reed, because Namor and blah blah. You know, like, there would be
Right.
all
Yeah.
this,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
know,
They
like,
spoon feed it
telling.
to you.
But Hickman doesn't
Yeah.
treat you like you. Yeah, he spoon feed. Hickman doesn't treat you like you're
Mhm.
stupid. You have to sit there and
Mm-mm.
you think and go, oh, yeah, you know. And that to me is, it's just like there's like an endorphin rush when I'm reading it. Like, I like that. So I'll stop talking
Very,
now. But that's
very
what I liked about these.
hyped. Super hyped. Oh, you'll be talking a lot more because
It's
we're
okay.
getting into it now. We've dipped our toe in. All right. So Twin, I'm gonna go back over to you. So we're in the thick of it. We're in it now.
All right.
Here we go. I'm just gonna tell you, like, hit me with, some of your most impactful moments, some of your favorite parts. Feel free to share your screen if you want to go through them. If you want me to assist, just tell me the page number and I'll jump over to them. But we're in it now.
All righty. So, moment number one that I'm thinking of, it's the very first issue. Uh, thing about me, I'm a huge Ben Grimm fan. He's been one of my favorite heroes, like, since I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so the first issue, Mole Man comes up. He's telling the Fantastic Four, "Hey, the High Evolutionary, he made this city. Everybody who's in there, they evolve at a rapid pace, and the Moloids, they evolve and they get like this hyper intellect. They turn kind of almost pretty much humanoid." And
Mm-hmm.
so there are these kids born in the city and they're dying because they're evolving too fast. And so, the city's rising. And so Reed and them, and they're like, well, we have to get out of here. We can't stay down here. There'll be a cave in. We can't survive. So But what does Ben Grimm, my favorite ever loving blue eyed thing, do? He knows there's kids in the city, and being the heroic guy that he is, says, stick around as long as you can. And he jumps out of their vehicle into the city, and he's evolving in there as well. So he's got like this giant baboon brain kind of going on. He won't survive in the city for very long. But he goes and he pulls these kids out of the city, puts them in their vehicle and saves them, takes them up to the surface. And so I was like, that's what Ben Grimm does. Everyone thinks he's just like the curmudgeon guy who hates that he's a monster and he just wants to fight bad guys, but he does have this heart of gold, and he is gonna do the right thing, even if it puts himself in jeopardy. Like even if it
Yep.
makes him look like more of a monster, or if it, whatever. So that's moment number one. It's just Ben Grimm being Ben Grimm, doing the right thing. So
I
yeah,
want to I want to
that's
point something out about that too. What's interesting is if you look at the shape of his head, and we talked about like the baboon thing.
mm-hmm.
You mentioned a few things. One, bit like Ben Grimm's morality and his humanity. He's the heart trapped inside the body of a monster. Ben Grimm is the heart of the Fantastic Four.
Yep.
And isn't it interesting like that his head ended up getting shaped kind of like a heart?
Kinda. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's interesting. This is I'm talking a little bit about it because it's something that I put in my I noted it, but it's not one of my main notes. But he like his insecurity is his visage, right? Like it's his look.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that he's constantly battling about, right? He goes back and forth. There's some opportunities to for him to go back to his original form that happens in other runs and stuff, and
Yeah.
and he does it, and so like he's for a guy who's so secure, the only thing he's insecure about is the very thing that happened to him, and it's his exterior. Johnny
Mm-hmm.
knows, and Johnny always pokes fun of it. And the only reason why Johnny Storm still has a head is because Ben loves him,
He can
right?
get away. What's that brother relationship? Because I like with my brother, I know that I can push his buttons, and
Right,
yeah, it's gonna tick him off, of course. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's still that family bond. So
right.
yeah.
Anybody else, they wouldn't have a noggin anymore. So
Nope.
I just think it was interesting, an interesting artistic choice to know all of those things, and Ben show that about himself. Completely jumps out the ship, goes straight for the dude. Where's the kids? Goes straight to the kids, saves them, and and makes himself look even worse in the midst of it. But oddly enough, within that additional monstrosity that he's turned into because of going into that city that evolves everyone, they
Mm-hmm.
Del Eaglesham made the decision to kind of make his head look more like what he truly is inside, which is this, the symbol of a heart. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very very great moment, standout one. Ash, we're going to you next. Number one most impactful moment, and not like the most impactful, but your a first moment that was a favorite of yours that stood out to you that you want to share.
Well, Zach kind of stole my thunder here, but
Oh no.
that scene exactly.
There's no rules. We could talk about that same scene again. That's
Okay.
totally fine.
This first issue was my favorite of the whole volume. This
Hmm.
adventure with the Mole Man, to me, like this was quintessential Fantastic Four. You're having an adventure. They're going off into like the center of the earth. Mole Man, of course, is the archetypical villain of the Fantastic Four. In this case, he's presented in a new light. He's coming to them for help. He's kind of repenting from his old ways. So we have some interesting things. And the High Evolutionary, I'm not as big a fan like of him as you are, but he's a very interesting character. He's very well suited for Fantastic Four stories. So he's got this lost city, and okay, what's going on? I'm intrigued. They get on their little they got their little craft. I don't even know what to call this thing, but they have this craft, and they're doing their journey. And to me, it's like very cinematic, kind of like I just imagine about movies that I've really like The Abyss, as an example, like when they're going down into the trench, and it's like, ooh, and I got notes of that as I was reading. There's a scene, a really impactful scene, where they come across the dead carcass of Galactus. And it's such a great page turn where they're just like, oh my God, what is that? And you flip the page and it's just a full page reveal of Galactus. If you want to show it's page 241.
Yep.
And yeah, I was like, oh, what's that? And you get some little lore about how it's not our Galactus, but it was a future Galactus. So that was
Well,
kind of neat.
Yeah.
remember, it was from this is even a callback to the first volume because this is one of the first things he went and did with the Council of Reeds. There was a Galactus that was attacking Earth and one of their dimensions, and he went and helped kill it. And that was one of the first times that he had a moral issue with what they were doing because he never killed Galactus before. He always chose a route that didn't involve completely killing Galactus, or most of the time for the main lore.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I
this
hadn't
was
put
one of
that
the
together.
first times. Yeah, see, that's what I mean. And I gotta pause and take a second, Ash. This is why I've been bugging you for years to come and read this with us because I knew that all the things that you're talking about, it being episodic, it not being completely written for the trade, things wrapping up and having continually storylines. All of this stuff is coming together. This is why I wanted you to read this. So yeah, this Galactus, and the reason why he said, "Oh, I've been down this route before," and that makes you think like, "Oh, well, what brought you down this route before?" Is because he's the one that had to bury the Galactus that him and the Council of Reeds killed, and this is him.
Okay. I didn't put that together, but for sure that's really cool. Um, the whole descent. I think this comic is the whole thing about this comic is just descending further and further and coming across different things. I found that very exciting. If you're into like exploration of the unknown, you're getting it full on in this. And then they finally reach the city, um, the lost city of the High Executioner, and it's really cool reveal. Um, it's on page 246. There you go. Yeah, you got it. A really cool shot here. Of course, again, Dale Eaglesham's art is just it's just impeccable. Like he shot is just beautiful. If you
Yeah.
like art, if you like you want to see this. And then of course after they get to the city, that's Zach's scene. That just this hit me where a thing is like, hold on, there's something I got to do, and Reed's like, whoa, what are you doing? Stop! And he's like, try to wait if you can. Like he doesn't even give two thoughts. Like he's not even saying you need to totally wait for me. Like he kind of even understands if they can't. Like he's got to do this. He doesn't ask permission, and that really shows the heroism of the thing. And this does, like I agree, speaks to his heart. And this is the kind of stuff that I like what Hickman does, where it speaks to character emotions, but in an organic way, not in a forced way. Sometimes I feel like he forces things and it's like it doesn't work for me. But when he lets it play out like this and just organically, he's not throwing a spotlight on it and being like, here, see, look, like you just the fact that the entire Fantastic Four only thing thought to save these kids speaks a lot. And I forgive them because, like I said, I don't look at them as superheroes in the same way as other characters. They're more adventurers, and they will fight to save and help people. But they don't have that drive like, say, like a Peter Parker does, like where they have to just
Right.
devote their lives to saving people. But Ben Grimm's like, nope, I can't. I can't let these. And he really relates to him, and I have to give Hickman credit where credit's due too. He really pulls the character out of each one of them. The Fantastic Four feel completely distinct. All four of them at all times. I never feel like the dialogue could be interchangeable. Johnny is 100% distinct from Thing, 100% distinct from Sue, 100% distinct from Reed. And almost to a fault, I gotta say, like Hickman makes Reed kind of a dick, but he's not the only one to ever have done that. So
Right? Yeah, that's a theme that started before him.
I'm about to
Yeah,
say, yeah,
so
that's been around since almost you could say even the Lee and Kirby days. I mean, He's had
Yeah,
moments
but
where he's
he's
just been.
it, it fits more in those. I hate to say it, in those 60 comics, because you're just
Hmm.
like, God, that was kind of the times. Is how. But when you're like in the 2010s and men are talking that way, you're like, whoa, dude. Um, but it works actually. It's to his credit because you're writing this character Reed, who is he is very impersonable. He's not an emotional guy
Yeah,
in
he's a
that
little on the
sense. Like
spectrum, even, I
he's a
bet.
little on the spectrum, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Hmm.
but then Hickman puts him into moral dilemmas, like choosing his wife over the council,
Yep.
like what's he
Hmm.
gonna do, type of thing. And there's a nice dialogue where the council's like, "Oh, we always choose the council. Like you just have to. Like you can't." And he's like, "Huh." And so there's moments like where Reed, finally comes to sue. You're just like, oh, okay, like that. It means something because of who Reed is, right?
Hmm.
It's actually not really in his character. Like he has to make great effort to put these priorities, which make those efforts like mean something because
Exactly.
it's not something that comes easy to him.
Yeah, that's his character
So I
flaw.
really appreciate that. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, he
and
he can
so
quickly get wrapped up in his brain and his work and the tasks at hand. And what he feels like is his purpose in life, which is to solve everything, to use his intellect to better the world. But his character flaw is he can miss the forest through the trees. He's trying so hard to make the world a better place that his world starts to suffer. And that's where he has to really try hard. That's his mountain to climb. It's not thinking something up or coming up with some solution. His mountain to climb is, can I keep focus of what matters the most first, and can I balance those things? And yeah, it's good that Hickman kept that consistent. For me, I'm gonna choose a little bit more of a lighthearted one. I had one that personally I wanted to talk about more, and maybe I'll circle back to it. But for me, I'm gonna choose the scene right here from issue number 2, where they have to go to their Antarctic base that they set up, and they were kind of allowing some other scientists to use to do some experimentation. The Fantastic Four and Reed had built some more advanced tools for them to do some sort of research and tracking out there. And as they get a report from that Antarctic base that there's effectively a disturbance, something that they found, with the more advanced tools now, that they just need to let the Fantastic Four know so they can decide what to do about it. They're going to Antarctica. Everybody is dressed accordingly except for Johnny Storm because he's the Human Torch, so he can just elevate his body temperature to combat the cold. So he shows up in some fire short shorts and some red matching cowboy boots and
Twin.
Oakley shades.
Oh, twin. We're so alike. It's terrifying. You know what panel I put it on just now?
What?
I put it on the same. I had it on the same one. I love it. I love in the corner because it shows their feet as they're getting out of the Fantastic car. So it's like, okay, boots, boots, things, boots, and it's just Johnny. It's like if either of y'all have ever seen How I Met Your Mother, Ted Mosby has this recurring joke where he has these red cowboy boots that come up every now and then, and so
Uh,
Johnny Storm just walks out with these bright orange boots on. And yeah, it makes sense, but it's also just so hilarious at the same time. It's
it is, and it's so Johnny Storm. And this is what I mean by some of the more lean character moments. Like this, you can almost not even look at a character moment if you didn't want to. But I'll be damned, the first time I read that, and it's funny, we come right out of a character moment, like they're talking about going into the mission, and they're going back and forth, and they're talking about like, uh, you know, uh, why are we even going, and Ben Grimm's talking about to beat people, or what did they say? As I volunteer us, why? Because is there anything we do better than exploration? Reed asks, and Ben says, beat people up, and then Johnny says, date hot women. and they just ignore him. Sue and Reed are so used to them. They just like start walking out to get ready, and they're like, "We're leaving in 30 minutes." And the thing is rocking back, and he falls back out of his chair, and like knocks his head against it. And Johnny is just like laughing, that wheeze laugh where you can't get any air in because your diaphragm is contracting so hard from the humor. And then we come right out of like a tiny little lean character moment there to them simply arriving. And what Zach said, we see the three pairs of Antarctic snow boots, and then we see some hot cowboy boots that he got from Lord knows where. And I'm just like, that is 1001% Johnny Storm. That's Johnny. Hickman, Eaglesham nailed it. So yeah, that's my first impactful moment.
That's a great. That's a great. I'm glad that you covered the page before it because I wanted to comment on that. Eaglesham's drawing of Thing right there, that enthusiasm. What he's saying, beat people up, but like capturing his enthusiasm, like you could see it in his eyes that he's just like, I get to beat someone up. Like he's like, it's like you just told him, like you just told a kid they're going to Disneyland, or something. He's just like, oh yeah. That's a great.
And then Johnny very nonchalantly
really
like, date hot women, because that's just what he does,
Yeah.
But as I was saying, I wanted to comment, like as I was saying, how Hickman really separated the characters and made them feel distinct. This page does that really subtly and excellently, because in the first panel you see Reed, he's like, and I volunteered us. The whole time he's like, blah blah, this is all happening, blah 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 blah, and I volunteered us. Because Reed is completely inconsiderate.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
He thinks about the problem, and he's like, we're just going to do it. And it's like, I'm not even going to consider whether anyone else wants to or how it's going to affect them, anything. Just we're doing it. And then, of course, we get to see beat people up, which is, the clobbering time trope of Ben Grimm. The date hot women, of course, being the Johnny. And then Sue is ever the responsible one of the team, right? She's the mother hen. She's always the one that keeps everyone on track, and she doesn't. We're leaving in 40 minutes. Those four bubbles distinctly illustrate, like in a very simple way, that you see, like these characters are different. So, anyways,
absolutely. Now, thank you for calling that out as well, Ash. Like, yeah, just within there, and oddly enough, four bubbles, but yeah, in a matter of four, oh, okay, yeah, you don't even have to count the very last one. But in four panels, oddly enough, we catch the essence of the personalities of the Fantastic Four. Reed being he's the baker who's inconsiderate of the ingredients. There's something that I want to cook. You guys are the ingredients, and I don't care how you feel, you're getting in the pot. Sue, backing that up, like, hey, we're leaving in 30 minutes, not even indulging the boys, being boys, you know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah, you had a boy moment, cool, we're leaving in 30 minutes. And I'll be damned if they weren't on that, on the Fantastic Car or whatever transport that was in 29 minutes, because they know Sue ain't playing. And then, yeah, you get Johnny and you get Ben, like, being who they are, being the, like a twin said, like, being the boys, being the brothers. And fantastic. So, all right. Well, that was mine. Twin, I'm kicking it back over to you.
All
what
right.
do you got as moment number 2?
Moment number 2. So I'm skipping the Inhuman. As much as I love the Inhuman, I call it the Star Trek issue because it does very much read like a Star Trek story, and I love that. But the two moments, the other two, the biggest ones that I have, and they kind of go together, but I'm gonna take them one at a time. They're in the next issue where it deals with Annihilus and with the negative zone stuff. So let me do this little share screen dealy again. And so the way when we're starting out on this issue, Johnny Storm, and I don't know if I can make my screen bigger if it's showing up on the Dealy Bopper or not. Hang on, let me see.
It shows, but the size is kind of fixed.
Okay. So yeah, this is starting with the third issue. I believe it's the third one. Yeah. And Johnny's with this hot girl. They met at this club, and he's like, the club's kind of stale. So he takes the girl back to the Baxter building, wanting to impress her. Hey, you like the Baxter building? We got gadgets and all this stuff. And, this girl, she goes over to this machine. She starts pushing in buttons, and it opens up the realm to the negative zone. Johnny goes over to try to stop her. She smacks him away. She turns around. Her eyes are bleeding. She's like this horror monster zombie. And then you find out, these little annihilus bugs are just like hatching and growing. It's very like body horror kind of. You find out it's basically a suit that she's been wearing. He's run by these bugs that were using him to get into the negative zone. And so what I really liked here, I call it, it's a little moment of growth for Johnny. There's this whole series of panels over here on the right hand side where it's like he's talking. It looks like he's talking to the little Herbie bot, but really it's like he's kind of talking to himself, working through this problem where he's like, okay, Johnny goes to bar. Johnny gets the girl. Girl turns out to be a bug monster. Bug monster goes through the hole. Johnny never kissed the bug, so I call it. So it's like he's thinking through it, but then he also throws in the little comedy lines there. But
Right.
then, so the part that's really cool is like he figures out that they have a bomb, that they're going to cause some damage, and so what the last thing he goes is, "It's my mess. I'm going to fix it." And so he's like going to take ownership. He doesn't want to, and it's very much like, on the one hand, there's some maturity to be found in that, like you're going to clean up your own mess, but
Yep.
then also on this type, it's kind of like, the kid who breaks the good china plate and he wants to fix it up before his parents find out, kind of. It's a little bit
Right.
of both.
Very
So
much.
it's very much a Johnny Storm thing where there's a problem going on. He wants to prove that he's, I guess, as responsible and as mature about things as Reed and Sue and them, but
Hmm.
he also just goes about it. He's like, okay, leave the portal to the dangerous negative zone. Leave that open for 5 minutes. I'll be back. And then he just like, I'm just gonna go light a few bugs on fire. I'll be back. It's fine. It's a very Johnny Storm moment, and kind of reminded me how much I like Johnny Storm. I mentioned The Thing has always been one of my favorites, but Johnny Storm is, equally. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I like about his character. Uh, you know, so yeah, this is a outstanding, impactful moment number 3 or number 2.
Numeral two. Yes. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Like that. That's one of the things that I love about this entire run, and why I say I feel like the character moments are right there with the plot moments. Or at least not far off,
Mm-hmm.
because we see growth in the characters. We saw Reed grow in the first one. We're seeing
Right.
Johnny grow here in this one.
Yep.
And I said growth. So he's still far off from where he needs to be, but he did
Mm-hmm.
take a step. I mean, he needed to take 2 steps. He needed to let everyone know what he did
Right.
and whatnot, so the team can work on it as a whole. And especially Reed can, run things through his mind, put things through the paces, and make sure that there's no, later damage that can come later on. But Johnny Storm he tried to
Mm-hmm.
be responsible, and he even was a little responsible. That's character growth, and
Yeah.
we can easily see that. I think that was a great moment. um all right, let's see. So you did number 2. Ash, it's on you. What is your number 2 next impactful scene?
So, unlike Zach, who pretends to like stuff in space but then skips over it when
I'm
I
heading
do
over
like
to the
stuff in
Inhumans.
space.
so in the third issue
Okay.
is the Inhumans, and it opens
Mm-hmm.
up with the Inhumans on the moon, the blue area of the moon,
Mm-hmm.
and they're talking about like this prophetic thing, like it's time, blah blah blah. Black Bolt, you are chosen, and you're like, what's going on? And I don't know who this character is, that the old man with the beard looks like Merlin. Um, but he says, I'm your wayfinder, and so it kind of takes place 6 months ago, and it kind of goes forward. It's like then 2 months ago, then yesterday, and then the Watcher is standing there on the moon. He's like, "It's indeed a time of change. Look up." And this giant ship shows up, which is the city ship, and you're like, "Okay, what's going on?" And the whole time, I'm just really intrigued. This big ship's landing on the moon. Then we cut over to the Fantastic Four, and they hear about, hey, something's going on the moon, and it's like, hey, what? Who's up for a walk on the moon? So, real quick, everyone into the rocket ship, and I love this page. They're launching on 286. Just such a cool shot here. It's real simple, but just the rocket ship launching and getting to see the Fantastic Four. I mean, because remember they started off as astronauts essentially.
Yep.
Right. So it's
So
like full circle. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a very evocative scene. I just love how Dale renders the shot here of the rocket. Just very, I'm a right stuff kind of guy. Like this just makes me all giddy inside. So they get to the moon and run up to the that old man, and he's got this like evil looking grin as he's addressing Sue. And then they start to basically explain what's going to come inside, blah blah. And he explains that what the Inhumans were just basically experiments from the Kree, but they weren't the only
Right.
ones. There were these other races, and you're like, oh, what's going on? So it's really this intriguing story about how these other 4 races that they got experimented on and unlock latent powers and different things, and so you're like, oh, okay. And then we get introduced to these races, and each one is led by a matriarch. And then, okay, you're like, okay, what's going on with that? And then they identify themselves as the 4 queens for the 1 king. And you're like, what's that all about? And you're like, who could be the one? Oh, it's Black Bolt.
Yeah.
And this big uniting thing. And it's like, what's going on? And so finally you get to page 299. He's explaining to him, he's like, you see, Richards, Black Bolt is returning soon. And then, as foretold, we will be all together for the first time, a new people in a new land. To which Reed is like, "Oh, here on the blue area of the moon." And that whole man looks, no, someplace better. And they all point, and then they look, oh no, and you flip the next page, and it's Earth, and you're like, what? No. And then it's like cut to the data page. You're like, what? Damn it, Hickman. So
The data, I
that
love.
was really.
Can I just say too how much I love the data pages? Like I forgot that he was doing this with Fantastic Four. I know he did this recently with Hoxpox, with like all the little data things and intel pages, but I like these because there's so much more like deep. I say deep lore, but yeah, there's all these little like lore and facets that are on those. I really dig that.
Yep. And the interesting thing about it is that is something that Hickman has been doing since his very first book, the Nightly News, that was a script that he sent in to Image Comics, and Eric Stevenson cold pulled it out of a pile and then hit him up and said that he wanted to do it. That was the very first book that Hickman got published. He did all of the art, the lettering, and everything himself. And from that very first book, he had multiple data pages in there. Maybe at some point in time, maybe later in the future, that'll be a book that we go over. It was, I mean, if you want to start a career in comics, I'll be damned if that ain't the way to do it. It was very impressive. But to bring it back around here, it's nice that originally they were very flippant and they were very flippant and they were very satirical in that first book. But it was nice to see that he found a way to pull back on that, and by this time he hadn't gone crazy, and there wasn't like one in every book that was being published through the line that he was the head of. But at this time it was still more of like a novel thing, and it was more impactful to the story, and it had more bearing on the stories, and actually did give us more meaningful information than maybe what we our last recall of his use of these with Marvel had been. But yeah, Ash, that like because you're getting all this new lore, right? And you're like, okay, like this is like I can see how this might be important, but okay, we're expanding on the Inhumans. Okay, yes, like okay, Black Bolt is the king, like isn't he the Celestial Madonna or whatever, or Celestial Messiah? I think is who he is. Isn't that Black Bolt?
He's one of the king. They did when they did the big cosmic event, the War of Kings. I know he was one of them.
Right.
I don't remember if he was the celestial.
Messiah.
Celestial Madonna, I think of. I think it
S-
was Mantis.
s-
Messiah, maybe. It
Yes.
might be him. Yeah.
I think he might be the Messiah, and I think Mantis was the Madonna. If I'm wrong on that, be that as it may. But to see like what okay, well, what does that have to do with us? What does that got to do with the Fantastic Four? Well, it's where his kingdom is gonna be. And they point to the earth, and it's like, oh, he's gonna be the king of that? Uh, you know what?
That's not
I know
good.
I know Black Bolt. Why don't you let me talk to him? We've got a little bit of history. I think I might need to talk to Black Bolt. I mean, he's not going to talk back, but he, at least
That's true.
he'll hear me out, you know. So yeah, that was a very very good call. Very good call, Ash.
Yeah.
Hey, did you want to comment on that?
I did
Mm-hmm.
like how also I'm a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan, so I did like how some of the alien races that they had, like the Centauri, which is the race that Yondu is,
Yes,
and then
yeah, got
the
incorporated.
Badoon. The
Mm-hmm.
Badoon, which are the enemies of the Guardians, they get some representation in there too. So I do like how they pulled from they didn't just make up necessarily brand new alien species. They actually borrowed from that deep Marvel cosmic library that's out there. That was really neat, I thought.
Absolutely, yeah. They took advantage of the lore. Um, let's see. So mine. So now I'll go back to me being Skip and all, and it's gotta be all deep and whatever whatever it is. I'm gonna go back to the one that I was talking about. So, this is we're going back to the first issue. This is when they are getting close to they're still burrowing. They're going through the earth. There was a reason why they took the route that they did. Reed was talking about, there being a fault line. So the mole man just was like, "Oh, let's just burrow down." And Reed's like, "No, we're gonna go through the water. We're gonna take this way. We don't want to disturb the fault line in the city. We don't want to cause any more damage." But there's a conversation that kind of gets sparked, and I'm gonna read it off here. So, um, they're kind of I think it was Ben who was kind of questioning, the mole man, like, all of a sudden, yeah, I'll just read us through the scene. So they're getting close. They're in Subterranea, and Mole Man says, "Beautiful, isn't it?" And Ben says, "It ain't bad, but that ain't really what I'm paying attention to." Mole Man says, "Is there something bothering you, Grim?" And Ben says, "Nope, not a thing. Interesting, not a thing. Ha." I'm just waiting until you show your true colors so I can clobber me a little person. And Mo Man says, "Ah, you still think I'm up to my old ways?" Ben says, You saying that ain't the case, pal?" And this is where, right here, is where Hickman really begins to speak through the comic onto something, and it's something that we've seen him do multiple times before. I note a scene um, with a gosh, I'm trying to think oh, anyway, we'll go back to that in a second. But he's talking through the comic, so here we are. It says, "I this is Mole Man saying, I no longer want to destroy society, Grim. I don't even care about the surface. Look at what that place has become, the fall of man and the end of the world. I just want my kingdom, and I want it to be that, mine." Ben says, "You're talking about the the Moloids going to the city and becoming something other than your slaves, right?" Mole Man says, "Certain creatures should be content with what they are." Ben says, Nobody should have to be a monster that don't want to be." Of course,
Mm.
very personal to him and his situation. A very Ben Grimm thing to say, a very Ben Grimm thing to make a stand on. Mole Man says, "Do you know that the Moloids in the city refuse to reproduce? They did at first, but the process they underwent made their children like the ones you met in the Baxter building. Just as intelligent, but they still had their old skin, a constant reminder of what has been. So then they stopped having babies." So, of course, his whole thing is in the evolutionary city, his moloids found their way into there, and then they began to evolve into a more intelligent species. But at the cost of what they look like physically. They advanced a little bit physically, but they still had remnants of what they looked like before. And Moman says, now they only grow their numbers by absorbing my people into that city. So they stop reproducing. They just call more Moloids into the city. That's the only way their numbers increase. And he says, do you know what they did with those children they abandoned? With those children they abandoned them in the area underneath the city. They left them to survive all alone. Now there are only a few left. So I ask you, this is really it. So I ask you, which is better? Simple creatures who know nothing more than community and the comfort of their family, or enlightened individuals who abandon those things for their own personal gain? And then the question doesn't get answered. Ben says, we've stopped. So in a way, he ended the conversation and he kind of tuned out of it. And he ended the conversation by something that happened in front of us, but that's not where the narrative ends. It says, Moldman says, Ben says, is this the end of the line? And then I don't know who this is that says it. I believe it's Reed, and it makes the more sense for it to be Reed. Or maybe Moleman. But in either case, it says, oh no, we'll be going much deeper. And to me, Hickman makes the statement, he asks the question. He uses a story to like set up the framework of what the conflict is. And then he asks the question, is it better in life that simple creatures know nothing more than like community and the comfort of their family, or to grow past that and enlightened individuals abandon those things, for their own personal gain? And who was just in that situation in volume 1? Reed. Reed was
Yeah.
just in that situation, and Reed had to ask himself that question. But we're getting asked that question, and right as we think that, that the question didn't get answered, which one is better? Again, Hickman not spoon feeding it to us; he's leaving it up. We talk about this a lot these days, right? Or we hear people talk about it. Don't preach to me. Present what the scenario is, and then let me make a decision on my own as a person, as a reader, if you're going to talk about that within a book. But Hickman says, oh, this isn't the end of this conversation. We will be going much deeper. And we do go much deeper later on in the book. That moment really hit me.
Yeah, that's really. I was thinking about that too when I read it. Just that whole conversation between, especially when he says no one should be a monster that doesn't want to be, because that's
Mm-hmm.
Ben's like, that's his thing, right? Because he's the only one that can't turn his power off, and it just
Right.
bother. He's always talking about it. So yeah, that was chef's
Mm-hmm.
kiss.
Chef's kiss indeed. And
No,
it
this
was
is a good.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Ash. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say this is a really good example. It's making me think about it. Over on my Discord channel, we've been having a little discussion about great writers of all time and kind of having a little friendly debate about, just people having different opinions on who the great writers are and why and different things. And in my opinion, this here is an example of great writing, I think, that really didn't exist in it didn't
Really
exist
before
in
the
the golden
modern
and silver
age.
age. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I think because I guess to help clear things up, I've been making an assertion that Alan Moore is one of the top writers of all time, and I think that one of that it clearly illustrates is because he's able to write on levels like this that golden and silver age writers, bless their hearts, they accomplished a lot. They built the foundations that we all have. But it was a simpler time. It was a simpler industry. They weren't out to write the great American novel. Like they were just out there to entertain kids who are going to pick up books
Mm-hmm.
off the rack, or um but this is sophisticated writing. How this works, like how you illustrate how he points this out, works on multiple levels. Both in reality of the book, they are descending deeper, but Hickman is also stating we're going to go deeper into this intellectualizing that the story is commenting on. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a multi-layered type of thing, and that is a very advanced form of writing that in the comics industry at least is as a rare thing. And I just wanted to point out that I appreciated this too. I didn't think of it as an impactful scene, so I didn't like comment on it, but I'm glad everything you said, I was just nodding my head as you were saying it, because I really do appreciate this like level of sophistication in writing.
Your camera turned on, so I saw you nodding. That's why I kept going.
Oh, okay,
I'm,
cool.
I'm kidding. Of course, I'm kidding. You can't. The Ash on Comics image was intact. No, I appreciate that. Like
Uh,
and especially like having read through it, I can honestly say because what this is my third or fourth time reading through it. I third or fourth because I've read through it more than twice now, and I can tell you that the first like that didn't hit me the way that it did until this time. I never noted that like that before, but yeah, it hit me, and thinking about where the story goes. Oh boy, did we absolutely go deeper? All right, Twin, you're up. Oh wait, yeah, Ash went, I went. So yeah, you're on your third now, right?
Yeah, this is the third one.
All right, here we
And
go.
we're jumping back to that issue that I just talked about.
Okay.
Where Johnny like is taking responsibility. He's gonna solve the problem himself. But the scene that I'm using, impact scene number 3, is the
Mm,
aftermath of that decision. So
mm,
there's this scene after, it says later in the Baxter building, and Johnny's chilling out. Reed is like, "Hey, you got a minute to talk?" And Reed knows like you don't do anything in the Baxter building, I guess, where Reed doesn't know about it. So
right.
he knows that Johnny went into the negative zone by himself, and he gives Johnny this chance to come clean, and Johnny's like, I don't know what I was thinking. Reed kind of gives him the business. He's like, you should have come to get me or to get Ben. We don't do things by ourselves or anything. And so Johnny, he just kind of like he's talking, he's just admitting that I can't believe I left it open. Oh man, and there were kids in the building. Like what would have happened to them? And so there's this chance where Reed he can be like this strict father figure, is like wagging his finger at Johnny, saying you did a bad job, but he turns it around. And I thought this was really cool because typically you think of scenes with Reed, like, okay, there's scenes where you have the relationship with Reed and Sue because they're married, or there's Reed and Ben because they were college besties. But
Mhm.
Reed and Johnny, you typically, like, they're the two ones that you don't normally associate. You don't normally think of them being in a scene, let alone an impactful scene together.
The
So
in-laws.
the in exactly, they're in-laws, and so and not only are they in-laws, but they're opposites, right? Reed's
Mhm.
intellectual, kind of introverted, and then Johnny's Mr. Extrovert, out with a different girl every night.
Yep.
Uh, so there's this talk they're having, and he's like, "Listen, Johnny, we love the way you are, how you want to just like jump in without thinking. It's very different. Again, very different to Reed's approach, which is sit back and analyze everything before
Right.
taking action, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so he's talking to Johnny, and he's like, you know, kind of having this heart to heart talk with them, like, hey, things are changing, stuff's going on with Ben and Sue, and he's like, I can't even talk about what I'm going through. So he's just like, you're going to be experiencing, he's like letting him know, it's like, hey, there's going to be a growth moment, there's going to be a moment for you as well. And Johnny's like, well, what am I supposed to do when that moment comes? And you and I know this, Skip, because I know we've read this, and it's very foreshadowy feeling. But
Yes.
he's like, when that moment comes, you just have to ask yourself this question: what do you stand for? And it's just like just this whole moment, not necessarily that last bit of dialogue, but just like this whole moment. It was just really cool. Again, with the Fantastic Four, yeah, I like the exploration and the bad guys and the comic cape stuff, but really when you get down to it with the Fantastic Four, for me, it's all about the family bonds. I talked about this when we talked about the first volume.
Yep.
And again, just seeing it, even with the two characters that are the least likely to have that strong tie, I think Hickman really does a good job of just like really hitting that emotional impact, that familial impact. Because Johnny, his dad's not around in the comics,
Right.
and then Reed, yeah, he's a dad to his kids, but he's
His dad
also
wasn't
the
around for him.
Exactly, exactly. So he's trying to be the dad. We even talk. I think they even say in the first volume where his dad tells him like, "Be a better dad,"
Yep.
and so he's taking that not only as an approach to his own kids, but then also to Johnny,
Yeah,
or
as a
even
mentor and
to
a
every.
big brother. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, just a really great, not as loud, not as much action, but a nice, more quiet, intimate scene, but
Mm-hmm.
still one that I really really dug. I was really impactful, I thought.
Yep.
So
Absolutely, and that's what I meant by these character moments being more lean, because this whole moment is only 2 pages. It's
two
just two
pages, that's it.
pages, very lean, but so much happens. Like, or I should say, there's so much gravity and so much weight in within the scene, and to again be like to complete what you said, to be the yin to your yang. uh, he tells him, you have to ask yourself that, a question. What is it that you stand, or what is it you stand for? And then the second part of that was, when you can answer that, then you'll know. And again, yes, very foreshadowy and all of that other stuff. We won't get into too much of that right now, but I'm going to tie it in to, again, how Hickman had so many through lines, not with just plots, but also character development. I don't know if like if Reed could have had this conversation with Johnny in such a successful way and meaningful way if he didn't go through what he went through in the first issue, and he had to answer that he had to get asked that question, and he had to answer it for himself. His
Hmm.
growth as the leader and as a man, and all the things that his father said, be better than me, be a better brother, be a better husband, be a better man, Reed, is what his dad was telling to Reed. And Reed had to go through that growth in volume one, be that, hear the voice of his father in his head, guiding him, from afar, from the past, and then has to apply that to Johnny in the moment so he can help grow Johnny up. And
Hmm.
Johnny wants to. He showed that he wants to, but he just needs that extra little push. He needs that gap filled in. And if Reed didn't go through what he went through with Sue, and if he didn't make the right decision in volume one and have his character grow, he couldn't have helped Johnny grow right here. Hickman was really hitting these character moments in volume two in just a very lean but precise way.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's the other thing. And I talk about this all the time with modern comics, how it can take you can take a whole issue and not go anywhere. You can drag, something like in here is 2 pages, but a modern, any other modern Marvel book can take the same 2 pages and just stretch it out to a whole issue, and you waste a whole bunch of time and panels and the reader's time reading it, where he just condenses it to 2 pages. You still get a bunch of other material, a bunch of other stuff happening in the issue, but he's able to take 2 pages to just drive home that impact. It's absolutely outstanding.
Absolutely. Ash, you can feel free to comment on it if you like, and if you don't have a comment, you can go into yours.
So I just wanted to actually say something came to my mind as Zach was commenting on this scene,
Mm-hmm.
and I find it very interesting how we had a little bit of a different take on this. When I'm
Mm-hmm.
reading Reed counsel Johnny here,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not actually seeing Reed be like the polar opposite the way Zach did.
Oh, okay.
Um, I do agree that Reed is more of an introvert and Johnny's extrovert, but the way I saw this, and I think it's because it's my own projection, I'm a bit this way myself, is
Mm-hmm.
Reed is the seasoned guy who's made the mistakes. He's been the guy who's, you know, and he because he is a guy who jumps in. He's
Hmm.
not. I don't think he is the guy that sits back and goes, "Well, let me take my time and think about this." He's the guy that's like, "I'm gonna go do this now," right? And Sue, like, she leaves Sue behind. He's very impulsive. Doesn't seem, like we said before, he's inconsiderate. He doesn't take time to seek counsel of others or their approval. I'm gonna make a decision. I'm gonna go with it. And to me, as what I was reading this, is like, hey, I love that you dive in head first, Johnny. We all do. To me, it was like Reed relating to that. Like, I get that. Like, I dive in too sometimes. Like, but you have to start paying attention to what's going on. To me, I'm hearing Reed be like, I've made some mistakes and things have blown up in my face before. like, Johnny's younger, and it's like it to me it feels a lot like how when I give counsel to people younger than myself, it's not because I'm better than them, it's because I've made those mistakes and I don't want them to have to go down that road. So anyways, that's
I like
just
that.
how I was
Yeah,
seeing that
no,
theme.
totally. I could totally see that. I didn't think about it looking at it from that option. No, or for that perspective, I should say. No, I like that.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I can definitely see I could see some of that in there, and he definitely was leveling with him, which in order for people to be receptive, you have to you have to get on their level and let them know you understand, because if it's just opposing, if you don't find the common ground, or then it's harder to get the seeds into the soil. But if you can do that, you know, then you can get it in there. I've made mistakes, and I've seen where it got me. I want to help you try to avoid some of those, especially more of those in the future. So for
And
sure.
and one final bit on that is we've talked about this a lot in this past, Skip. Like, I think that's one of the things I love about good writing is that there isn't one perfect way to interpret the scene.
Hmm.
Like, that the writers leave room for you to have your own interpretation. So many writers can be so heavy-handed and like make sure like, okay, I gotta put as much information in there because I don't want anyone to interpret it other than the way I intend for them to interpret it, which is important for certain things. But a lot of times, if Zach reads the scene and it works the way Zach interpreted it, it didn't mess up the story. Like, it works for him. If I see it and I see my own issues into the story, it works for me. I think that's one of the magical things about just art in general. Like, it speaks to us in a very personal way. And you leave room for that. And I love that Hickman is one of those type of writers that he doesn't need to constantly hold your hand through everything he's doing and like, now this is what I'm trying to say. Like, hey, yeah, you read it your way.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the reoccurring themes of some of the better writers out there, is that they leave that room and they say, that they want people to find, their connection to the story. I think, the good writers know that the you know, people finding their own hook and their own investment in it is going to be a stronger hold and a stronger bond than them maybe trying to be so forceful with what they want you to get from it. And then it's like, even if you do get it, like, you can not get it and then there's less of a bond. You could get it, but it doesn't connect with you in a personal enough way, so it's not as strong of a bond. But if you can connect with it in your own personal way, through an interpretation that speaks to you, then that's the strongest type of bond that a reader can develop with the material. Absolutely. And on that note, Mr. On Comics, you're on.
Um, so I'm running out of impactful scenes that haven't already been covered. I guess I'm going to go back to the final issue that Zach talked about with the Johnny Storm, because of the part where he's talking to the robot. I thought was a great scene. I liked. I want to just echo everything that Zach said about that scene. But also continuing, I love how the page turn is on that, and the robot's just like bloop, and Johnny's like, relax. I'm gonna make a flame bait of 5 bugs and I'll be right back. No problem. And then you flip the page. I'm an idiot.
Yep.
it's just so it's so quintessential John, like just totally like hot headed. I got this, and then immediately like I don't got this. Like what he just doesn't think. Of course, this is what's going to lead to the conversation he has with Reed later. But it's just a great full page spread of the nihilists fighting. What's this guy's name? Blastar, his forces, just big battle going on, and he's just like, oh no! Like he's immediately realizes he's in over his head. He thought he was just going to get 5 little bugs, and then the pages that precede it just are this battle, and it's like he's kind of like brought this on them, right? These soldiers now are like dying, and he's like, oh, the bomb, and then they can't stop it, and everyone's just it blows up, and you can see this one soldier guy. He's just getting chomped on by the bugs. You're just like, geez, Johnny, what did you do? And then he sees the army of bugs coming after him, and he's like, uh-oh. And he starts to like flame them, but then they're pretty resistant to the flames, and he's just like, I gotta get out of here. Like he just he takes
abort,
off.
abort.
It's abort, yeah.
This was a bad idea. This idea was not thought out.
So it's a great moment too, like so that you can have that Reed scene, but it was a lot of fun. And again, like it's that organic lightheartedness that works well for me. That just as an example, like I thought the birthday party was a little forced, like Hickman is trying to force moments. Here I feel like it's a lot more just let them come. And I really enjoy it when these play out. So that was one of my favorite bits.
Absolutely. No, that was a good one. That was one that that stuck out to me as I was going through it. Just the whole like, I got this, and then he gets into it and sees what he says. He's like, I don't got this. Why did I think I had this? This is bad. This is really bad. I'm gonna try, but this is in vain. Yeah, and then he literally is getting like people killed. You know, it's just oh gosh. You know, and oddly enough, he's telling an edited version of the story to Valeria because that's who he's recounting this to after the fact. If we take another personal moment and we talk about Johnny's growth, I think, you know, and I'm realizing this now. I think a little of the scene because you know he mentioned you know like later to Reed, you know he's saying like you know I was an idiot that like there's kids in the building, and not just Valeria and gosh really seriously come on
Franklin.
son, not just Valeria and Franklin, but also the mole kids you know too you know so
Yeah.
you know just so like you know just so many you know less capable more vulnerable I should say people in there, and you know he's harping on himself about that. I feel like him recounting this to Valeria is a little bit of a confessional for Johnny, kind of trying to get some of this off of his conscience, you know what I'm saying, to her in a way. I feel like this is him trying to atone and just being like, hey, I did this thing, like it was really stupid of me, like you know, I'm sorry. But he's still very much Johnny, so he's apologizing kind of and trying to atone in action, not necessarily, you know, like verbally, you know, full out. So, but I think he was trying to clear his conscience a little bit, and that's how Valeria ended up being the person, you know, that he's recounting this to, because she's one of the people that he directly put in danger, you know, with his carelessness, you know, and it's not just the negative zone thing. It's even, I mean, it started before that, right? It was at the club, you know, he was there. I mean, like, what was the scene? It was a club. It was a cult, you know, of the negative zone.
Yeah.
You know, and what does the Human Torch? What is his favorite pastime? Playing
Date hot women.
Yes, I was gonna. The way I was phrasing it was playing with fire.
Oh well, yeah. I like that better. That's good.
You know, so he likes to play with fire, and that's exactly what he did. He thought he wanted to get, you know, he wanted the hottest of hot women. He wanted a hot woman that was dangerous because she's like in a cult. She's all crazy, and you know, so he went that whole route. And I think he's really thinking back to it and being like, this was stupid from the get-go. It was stupid for me to want what I wanted. It was stupid for me to try to get it where I tried to get it from. It was stupid of me to bring it back to one of the, you know, most advanced, but also one of the most dangerous buildings in the city, in the nation, in the world. And then it was careless for me to walk her right past the gate to the negative zone. You know what I mean? So I think all of that was just weighing on him. And I think he went and tried to speak to Valeria. And of course, Valeria being the more intellectually advanced one, I mean, it probably would have been better. Like, he probably would have got more of what he wanted from going and talking to Franklin. But I think he also knew that, like, Franklin would have been one to be like, oh, Uncle Johnny, like, you know, I made a mistake too. I dropped my Legos the other day and they went all over the floor. And then, like, Dad stepped on one and he didn't have any shoes on. And he got a Lego, you know, corner to the foot, you know, and he really wasn't happy about that. He would have got, you know, that from Franklin. But from Valeria, I think what he got was someone who was really understood the magnitude of it without him having to say too much. So anyway, that was a little bit of what I pulled from this in the moment. Okay. I guess it's on me. It's on me for the last one, huh?
That's right.
I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna take us back earlier in the book. Let me go and get there. And again, I guess I'm gonna simplify this thing. Rego, world's great. Oh yeah, so it was the world's greatest comic magazine
Oh,
is
okay.
what this got defined as.
That humble Stan Lee moniker.
That's right. Stan, ever the humble hype man, right?
Right.
For me, I'm gonna go back to something, and this is more simplified, but I'm gonna magnify it because it plays a larger role later. It's the Moloids coming out of the sewer, and they're coming out of the sewer. It's in the middle of the street. Cars are going by. Of course, one of them totally gets just ransacked. Actually, they all kind of get hit, but one of them catches the brunt of it right there in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to point out Del Eaglesham's art. I know, it may not occur too much, but the detail in the grills, also the detail in the window and the backgrounds, and even like that vent type of thing right above the windshield. I just really noted that because I read these digitally in guided view, so the panel is full screen, and you really get to drink in all the detail of the panel. So again, just more shout out to Del Eaglesham. The action lines and stuff like that going right over the sewer and whatnot. But they get wrecked. Two of them can get up, and one of them, their body is toast. But they pop the head off, and they take the head with them. And the head is the one that had the message, so that's the one that had to give the message. And of course, they give it right in time and XYZ. But that head ends up playing such a larger role down the line. And I think it's so interesting, like the care that the other Morloids took with taking it, kind of caring for it, even how they hold it when they kneel. The head, it's so funny because you're just like, that was kind of grotesque and a little morbid how they just snapped the head off the spine and took it with them. But there's a deeper, you can look at it and you can just be like, oh, that was kind of like a rough, kind of grody moment. But that head plays such a larger role later. So to see how they cared and kind of treated that scene early on as a seed, looking back at it now, it was very, very masterfully done. And in such a way that it's fast paced. They come up, they get hit, they pop the head off. Baxter Building's, security is going off. The little security droid is talking to them. They are having coffee. They drop some of their coffee and water. They got to jump into action. They get down there. They kneel. The head gives the message, to clear the lobby. And literally the panel after that is the whole reason why the heads were coming in the first place, is because the mole man, was coming to, basically ask for their help. So he paces it so fast that the head pop will probably stay in your mind, and you're probably like, what? Okay, they took the head. Okay, this is just kind of weird. And then something comes and interrupts it, and you don't get to think about it too much. But by the time the head plays a bigger role later on, you kind of think back and you're like, damn, even that snapped off head is important to the story later on. This dude Hickman is on a whole nother level.
He
So
does
anyway,
not. He does not waste. He does not let a single panel go to waste here.
dude,
Hickman is. Yeah, he's if we're talking modern comic book writers, he's got to be in the top 5 at least,
oh for
if
sure.
not the top 3. He is just outstanding
when
storyteller.
he's on.
When he's on,
The
yeah,
problem with the Hickman can be hot or cold. But I just want to say,
I want to interrupt that to say only up until 2019 or 2018 or whatever Hoxpox came out and after.
yeah.
I'm telling you,
Well, yeah.
everything before that, just about everything, he was barely.
I
covered.
read Freedom Foundation.
Future Foundation, yeah.
Future
But
Foundation.
I'm telling you right now, you're Even how you're rereading volume one and whatnot, and like seeing different things, you're not going to look at Future Foundation the same once you get to it. I'm not saying you're going to think it's great, but it's going to hit you in a totally different way.
Now that's a possibility. I do want to reiterate, though, I was saying about what I love of Hickman brings me back to my love of Chris Claremont, what he was accomplishing back those days. Look at this page.
It's
Yeah.
awesome, isn't it?
Not just,
Mhm.
I mean, the one of the things that X-Men was known for was, besides Claremont, X-Men always had the top artists. You think about who drew X-Men. I mean, John Byrne, Alan Davis, John Romita Jr. in his prime, Silvestri, Jim Lee. There's a couple that I'm John Buscema, um, and there's some that I'm forgetting, but it always had like X-Men. They put the top artist. This might be some of the finest Fantastic Four art you're ever going to see. Look at this page, just the detail, and shout out to the colorist who is just
Yeah.
knocking it out of the park with these textures and just,
Paul
Hmm.
Mounts.
oh my goodness.
That's something I loved so much. It was actually on the previous page, Skip, where the Fantastic Four, they show up in the lobby after the Moloids come in, and it's like that first panel right up there in the top right corner. You see there's all the Fantastic, and they're all just textured so different, like, and the coloring, like Sue is like half transparent because she's invisible. Johnny's, of course, on fire. Thing looks like all rugged and rocky like he should be. And then Reed just, the way they just do the shading and the stretching, the way he looks so elastic and everything, like
Mhm.
it's, yeah, I got to agree with Ash. Eaglesham is just on point with this. And then shout out to the colorist, and God dog, man, it's just, and it's so bright. Like so many comics today, like they try to be dark, they try to be moody and all that. It's just, no, you got colors. One of your characters is literally a guy who sets himself like he's on fire. Like just the bright colors and everything.
Yeah,
It's,
how Johnny Storm is rendered is fantastic, and the
yeah,
rock textures on the thing.
yeah,
But I mean, the art is such.
it's great.
I just feel like in modern times, art is such a downplayed thing
Hmm.
because there's so many comics with just mediocre whatever art. So many people are really focused, like, just give me a good story, just give me a good story, and it's like, I get it. You want to sit down and read and enjoy the story, and I would have enjoyed this story
Yeah.
with mediocre art. It is a good story, but having that beautiful art is helps you be like Skip and like read this 3 times, 4 times,
Hmm.
because you go back and you just it's just a joy to experience the visual all over again with that story. I just man, Mole Man. I've never seen Mole Man look as good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. This is
seriously.
no
That's when I
doubt.
mean, like, it's funny because y'all are talking about that, and like that scene does pop. Like, when I thought about a page to go back to, this was the page I wanted to get to.
I
It's
love
just
this
that
page.
yeah, but what's funny about it is the part that stands out to me is Mole Man, like like he is rendered just so expertly, with all of like the curves and and whatnot in his face all throughout. Yeah, the texture and the tones across his head, the splotchiness of his skin, and how just all of that, and then his glasses, like how his face is so curved. There's so many curves in it from like the
Hmm.
wrinkles and just him being a mole. But then it gets balanced out with his glasses, extreme lines, and then even the lenses are just these small, rectangles. Like so, it's just even the type of lines that got put in that composition get balanced out. It's just very expert rendering.
You know what I'm just thinking? Somewhere out there, someone almost certainly purchased this original art and has in their collection.
That lucky son
What
of
an
a
amazing
bitch.
piece to have. Just-
I hate that person. I've never met them, but
this is it would be
it's probably like Dale Eaglesham's kid or something. It's like, sorry, little Eaglesham. Yeah, it is amazing. This is like one of my favorite pages in the entire volume in this whole collection.
yeah. Look at
It's
that. I mean,
great.
just and the detail of like everything going on in that big panel.
Yeah.
Oh, anyways, we're gonna talk about it all night.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
real. You're
Well,
not getting.
speaking of that, we're wrapping things up now, y'all. If we want to give our closing thoughts to this run, Twin, I will start with you.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the first, a little bit different overall tone than the first collection, the first volume we talked about. That did have a lot of those sci-fi elements. There was the Council of Reeds, there was New World, there was a lot of those, but whereas that was I for me the big draw was a lot more of those family bonds like between Reed and Sue, and Reed choosing ultimately his family over saving universes, his job. This one I liked because it did lean a little bit more, and I think you even touched on this at the beginning, where it's like expanding upon what had already been planted. Basically, it's like, okay, Hickman said, look, here's what happened in the first volume. We know, you've got the team together. You hear your characters, hear your players. Now we're going to expand. We're going to take these pre-established corners of like the mythos. We're going to take, Inhumans and Moloids and Negative Zone. We're going to take these concepts that you may or may not know, which is something else. I think that they take, like, if you're a brand new Fantastic Four reader, maybe you don't know who Mole Man is, or maybe you don't know who the Inhumans are. I think he does a really good job of also making these very accessible if you're a new reader. Like, I mean, can you imagine if this is the first time you've ever heard of Mole Man? Say you never even read or saw that first Fantastic Four cover with the mole monster. This is your first time, just
Oh
that
yeah,
one big page, and that's your introduction to Mole Man. Like, that's pretty awesome.
yeah,
So yeah, it's just it expands upon what was already planted in the first volume. You've got all these extra ingredients, and you can tell Hickman's baking a cake with all of them, and it's going to be just when it starts to bake, when that oven temperature starts to heat up and rise, and it starts to come up over the top of the dish. Ah, oh,
yeah.
man, it's gonna be
Mm-hmm.
good.
So good, so good. All righty, Ash. And what about you? Closing thoughts on Volume Two?
Well, I mean, I feel like I've said everything I can say. I just love the way this is being told. I love how it reminds me of old school comics where each issue is a comic. It's not just 20 pages of an ongoing big story. Um which those work when you're telling the writing for the trade. If I'm reading this now and after the fact, I'm reading this as a collected volume, so it would work for me in that aspect. But having been a longtime comic fan and knowing what it's like, I kind of just imagine myself reading those titles monthly and just experiencing it and just seeing the craft of Hickman being able to manage that in the modern era, which a lot of people say, oh, you can't do comics that way anymore. Like, and I was like, well, yeah, you clearly can.
Yeah,
Look, you just have to have skills. Um, the art, Dale Eaglesham is just gorgeous, man. I'm a huge art person. I mean, I grew up getting comics in the 80s and the 90s. I remember when Image came out, I became a huge Image fanboy because I didn't give a shit if Jim Lee could write comics or not. He was drawing a comic, I was gonna buy it. Like I wasn't like, well, I hope he can write a good story. I didn't care. I just bought it. Turned out I did enjoy the stories, um, but I cared about art, and it's something we don't see too much, unfortunately, because the industry is in different areas. Fans have different priorities and so forth, and there are good artists out there, but seeing it on a mainstream book like this, seeing a great artist paired up with a great writer, having an epic story like this, it just makes me, this is the second time I've read this, so it was just as enjoyable to read it again, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time I read it. I'm going to keep coming back to it because I'm very much enjoying it. I can't wait. Like, to me, I feel like a lot of this is teaser stuff. I feel like each one of these little stories is a setup for something, and they're gonna like all kind of like come together later down the road. And having already seen how he's treated Doom with that one story that I showed, and I what was it called? And I Get the Land was the name of the story.
hmm
That how Hickman wrote Doom in that story, I was like, spot on. Yes. Yes. I'm like, I get jittery when I see like, oh, they're doing a Doom story because so many people can't do it. I was so excited when they did the Doctor Doom ongoing series that Christopher Cantwell had. I bought that first issue. I did something I never do. I bought an incentive variant cover.
Oh wow,
I
yeah,
was
you're stoked.
yeah, I was like, "Eh," and then I was like, oh man, I was like let down. I was like, this isn't Doom. This doesn't feel right.
Well, it
And
was Christopher Cantwell. That's why.
yeah, well, I mean, not going into that, but just my point
Yeah.
was I was let down, and
Yeah.
it's just refreshing though, like to be like, oh, here's someone who's get like, not only is a good writer, but he gets the character right. Like, I can't. I just and Fantastic Four is my favorite Doom nemesis. Right.
Hmm.
I've seen Doom face the X-Men. Whatever. I don't think he's a good X-Men nemesis. I've seen him. I've seen him even like Spider. He's everything. He's a villain for everyone. The Avengers, whatever. But the Fantastic Four, his relationship with Reed, like his desire for Sue. It's like, I just can't wait. I can't wait
Yeah.
to see where this goes.
It's good to know that you can't wait. Very good. Now
I was
I'm
about
with
to
you.
say, Skip knows this. When I was looking for volume 2 of this run to read through, I went and I got the I guess it's like the complete collection edition, which skips the issues that we're talking about tonight. So I actually jumped ahead, and so stuff happened, and I was like, well, wait, when did this and this and this? So I had some gaps missing, but now having read these, I can see like, yeah, Hickman's got, oh boy, he's got stuff, man. He's like a magician with cards and scarves and all kinds of stuff up his sleeves. You don't know what's gonna pop up. It's fantastic.
Yeah, Twin got ahead and even got Twin got into Ash territory and read Future Foundation with all of this stuff in place. So he
Yeah.
already uh, he already knows a little bit more what goes down and how it's all tied. But all hope lies in Doom. All
All
hope
hope
lies in
lies in
Doom.
doom.
I can't say it enough. I'll say it another 1,000 times, hopefully, Lord willing, before I'm, cold and in the ground. But damn it, all hope lies in Doom. I'll use my last bits to kind of give Dale Eaglesham a little bit of love. Um, you don't hear me talk a lot about like relationships and gender roles and masculinity and femininity. You don't hear me talk a lot about that, but going back to Dale Eaglesham and giving him some love for how he does play up emotions and scenes. One of the things that really stood out for me the most in this comic was Sue's eyes, and I really want to highlight her eyes. How Dale Eaglesham rendered them on the
Mm.
left page when they're getting ready to go down into the water, and they're basically the dude's letting them know like, I'm concerned and I don't really think y'all should go, but it's up to y'all. And she's like, hey, we're gonna do it, when's it ready? And he's like, it's ready to go now. And just seeing like her eyes, she kind of almost reminds me of like Kim Basinger a little bit in this scene, and her eyes are just so kind and whatnot. And then once she decides like, yeah, they're gonna go do it, because she's backing up Reed on what he wanted to go do, then she confidently looks over to her man with a more, bedroom eyes, kind of like, let's say, passionate look, chin down, eyes up, eyebrow up, and she's like, let's go for a swim. And I just liked, like how Eaglesham rendered that, and also how Hickman wrote it. Um, she's telling her man like in multiple ways, like, I'm down for you, I'm down for this relationship, like I'm kind of getting hot with this whole situation, like if we could only find a room, you know what I'm saying, like underneath there, you know what I'm saying, we might make another Richards, but let's go for a swim. She's basically saying like, where you want to go, we're gonna go, and I'm gonna follow you, and I'm gonna make sure that we're in the, that we got the best shot when we get there. So I just wanted to give Eaglesham a little bit more love, and of course Hickman too. Final thoughts on it. Like, it's funny, as we started this conversation, I was thinking, man, this is such a setup volume, but not in the way that we normally. Usually, when we think of setup, we think of like, okay, we have to sacrifice something, because they have to set up something, so we're going to get more action or adventure or reveals later because this is a setup. But the way that Hickman did this, he very much harkened back to like OG comics where, like in some of those old comics, there might not even be like an overarching arc. It might just be periodical, like issue to issue. This is how it goes. And let us not forget at this time, just to remember, I'm blanking on his name. Bendis was well on his way to making writing for the trade the thing to do.
Yeah. This is around that. Yeah, you're right. This is around that time. Yeah.
This is around that time. He had already done his Daredevil run and all of that stuff, and so everybody was on that train, and Hickman completely bucked against that. And I'm sure he had to talk to editorial and Tom Brevoort a little bit and let him know, like, hey, I want to really show some love to the OG way of doing things, to Kirby. I want to make this a little more episodic. Here, I got a big brain. Here's the overarching thing, and these are all the things that we're going to build to and get to. We're going mega, but I want each issue to be its own thing a little bit more than what we're used to these days. And he was granted that, and us as comic readers only benefited the more from it. So I really appreciate that Jonathan Hickman went that route and did that. And the odd thing is, let us not forget the person that brought him over into Marvel and the person who kind of was his mentor and had his name on the first thing that Hickman wrote at Marvel, or the first series, was Brian Michael Bendis. Hickman wrote Secret Warriors. He took over Secret Warriors from Brian Michael Bendis, and Brian Michael Bendis' name was on the first volume for plotting. But by the time you got to the second volume, training wheels were off, and Bendis' name was no longer on that. They had a little spat. I know they have like a little relationship, and I seen them go back and forth on Twitter a little bit. And when Hickman had Twitter, I seen him drop very interesting snide remarks in Bendis' way, and I can very much tell you, and I think it's apparent, for Bendis being the man at this time, I think it's interesting that they picked Jonathan Hickman to be the architect to close the Ultimate Universe, which is the place where Bendis really took his career into the stratosphere and made his name a household name in comics. Hickman very much decided to be the anti-Bendis, and he came out with the crown for it. I just appreciate what we got in this volume. I appreciate where it's going. I can't wait. All hope lies in doom. Everybody who joined us, we appreciate you so much for joining us on this journey. The fact that we spoke at length like this about this book really just speaks to how well crafted and the joy that this book brings. It's sci-fi. You get those adventures. It's exploration. You get all that. You get character moments. You get sci-fi big plots. You get family. You get so much. Hickman really cooked up a full course meal in this run. And after this, when he gets into Avengers and New Avengers, he does go a little bit more right for the trade. So things aren't the opposite of this, but we really got to cherish this run because he was on point with how we like to receive comic book stories. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for joining us. Zach, thank you so much for being here, twin. Always a pleasure to do this with you. My main man Ash. I'm just glad I finally bugged you enough to where you joined us. And come to find out, you already read Volume 2, but I think it's pretty apparent that you'll be on the ride for Volume 3. So I hope y'all come back and join us.
I mean, oh, I was just saying the fact that you guys are doing this is just like the cherry on top. I would have eventually got around to reading this. I just have so many books, and it's just like, okay, it's there. I own it digitally, so that's kind of a thing. It's easy to like forget about it because it's not like sitting on a shelf where you stare at it and go, oh, I should read. So yeah, anyways, yeah, I'm totally down. I can't wait to go through this whole thing. Because I think I have all of it. So
absolutely. Well, we will let y'all know in time when we will do the next one. We'll discuss it, and we'll put it through our channels. You'll find out about it on YouTube or in Ash's Discord, or you may probably even on the Geeky Puppet Show. You will find out some way when we do the next one. But until that time, thank you for joining us, and we will see y'all on the next one.